Hey, everybody. Hope you're doing as well as can be. I wanted to talk today about something that comes up in conversation quite a lot, specifically political conversation, and that is this phrase and idea of the establishment. Now, this phrase and idea can mean a lot of things, but what I want to specifically talk about today is the U.S. political establishment, the establishment as it pertains to U.S. politics. Now, before I get in, blanket disclaimer, like I always like to say, this is all my opinion. This is all things that I have come to by reading and doing my own research and things that I believe. And I am always open to feedback and having a conversation about this. I think we could all do better in listening to each other and being willing to listen to the other side and maybe being willing to be wrong or correct yourself at some point. So please would love to have your have feedback on this and have a conversation about it if you like. Okay. So the establishment. First, I think it's a great idea to talk about just a general definition of, well, what is the establishment? And I would say it is a kind of a ruling group or an elite group that has control over a system. And when we talk about it within US politics, there's a couple of kind of elements that I think are the most core pieces of it. And I'd like to talk about the pieces, how they work, I would say, and then maybe talk about how what can we do about it, right? So here we go. Let me pull this up here. And I have a little crude drawing, but I think little visuals can always help. And I'm going to go top to bottom and just talk about how these pieces kind of work together. So very top here, the green circles. This to me represents the elite, the wealthy, the 1%, the very, very few in our country that control most of the wealth and continue to grow that wealth and expand that gap between the very, very rich and the rest of us. Below this, you have corporations. I have 5 listed here. This is not all of the buckets I would put particular groups of corporations in. These are ones that have come to mind, top of mind for me as I start to think about this. You've got those 5 listed here. We've also got things like, prisons are essentially corporations. You have healthcare is a big one. You have retail, like companies like Amazon. So there are lots of buckets corporations can come in. But the one thing about this here that I want to speak to primarily is we live in a capitalistic society. The primary goal of a corporation is to create and grow profits. So you could think of it as these corporations driving profit to feed it up to that 1%, that very wealthy, the richest of the rich in the country. The number one goal above all else is making a profit. And, we can look at things like the minimum wage. Obviously, these companies are not going to fight for a higher living wage because it will cut into their profits, right? So there's lots of other mechanisms here that we'll talk about, but that's just a blanket one we can speak to. If we want to speak to the one on the left, the military corporations, right? They get profits through creating weapons and military devices to create their profit. And what do they need to sell more weapons? They need war. They need they need continued conflict so that they can sell this military technology. And I think it's funny, it's called defense companies. A lot of these are, but so that's just a couple examples here. So let's go down to the next row. This is our donor groups. This is groups that will act on behalf of these corporate entities to funnel money to politicians to direct outcomes, to decrease regulations on these companies. So again, they can drive more profit. So we have lobbying groups, which are groups that get together to lobby for a specific outcome. So you might have a lobbying group, on behalf of oil and gas, lobbying that clean energy and green energy is not the way, and fighting for laws that will promote more oil and gas usage, right? So That is just one example. And then here we have super PACs, action committees, which do much of the same. They are basically a corporate entity working on behalf of these companies to, again, get an outcome. You also have individual donors, and these companies can directly donate to politicians, right? So there was a court case called Citizens United that allows companies to act as individuals. So that means that they can donate directly to people themselves. They can form PACs. They can form on the right here. I have the question mark because we have a lot of what we call dark money groups, which will funnel money to politicians and keep their donors hidden. So we have a lot of ways corporations and the elite can funnel money into politicians, and that's what we have here at the bottom. We have our politicians. I just have general here, Republican, Democrat. To me, they are one and the same. There are establishment politicians on both sides of the party. We have a lot of it going on. We have a lot of politicians who have been in office for decades, literal decades, and they stay in office and they can continue this perpetual cycle of not fighting for what the people want and fighting for what these companies literally pay them to do with corporate donations. Just think, do you think a politician is going to side with the people or the company that is paying them tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars? These are not just donations, these are in essence bribes. And this overall is the entire system that, to me, is the US political establishment. And it's been going on for quite a long time. It's been getting worse and worse. And we've got to continue to talk about it. We've got to continue to fight to change this system because it is literally destroying our country. So let's get into it. What can we do about this? How can we fight the establishment? One, term limits. There is no limit for our politicians in place for our politicians that says that they can only serve a certain amount of terms. We have certain politicians, again, that have been in for decades, perpetuating this cycle. There are plenty of bills that have been tried to be passed to set term limits. However, it's all has to be voted on by these politicians at the bottom of the screen. They're the ones who are going to have to set this law. And why would they do it when they're in this cycle and perpetuating things and getting these donations and getting rich? So one, we need to fight for term limits. We need to elect people that are for term limits so we can get this law passed. Two, Citizens United, as I said, that is that case which allows companies to act as individual entities and donate to politicians. This started quite a bit of this cycle and it made it so much worse. We need to repeal that case. We need to get the corporate money out of politics. It is literally destroying the system and the country. Just overall, campaign finance reform fits into this. There is a revolving door where the people at the bottom, the politicians, can actually start working for lobbying groups, and as soon as they leave office, start to work for a lobbying group or the company that for which a committee that they sat on. So this is a revolving door where all this money and people flow within the same system, and we need to not only change that, we need to reform that, but just overall how money is allowed to be spent in politics. And the last thing I would say is just know who is running, right? There are incumbents who have been in place for forever, for so long. And there are people that are running against them, often progressive politicians that are looking to make changes like set term limits, who are coming up against the establishment. When an establishment politician gets threatened, you'll often see a lot of money poured into their campaign when they have a progressive running against them who is often funded by grassroots, looking to crush that person who does not have the corporate backing and the money to support their campaign as much. So I would say know who is running. When you see a ton of money being donated to a particular candidate, I would look at the one that is running against them. There is a great site called Open Secrets where you can look at where donations are coming from. You can sort by different groups. This comes down to just, again, spending a little time. Know who is running in your district. Who is running? What do they stand for? It does not take quite a long time to do a little research on the people running in your state or even elsewhere. So that is the establishment to me. It is quite a juggernaut. It's a machine that has been going for a long time. We need to talk about it more. We need to fight this more. We need to stop this cycle from destroying our politics and our country. We need companies like Amazon to pay taxes. They will lobby for continued. They spend millions of dollars to lobby to keep in place this system where they do not pay taxes on billions of dollars that they make, while their workers are barely getting by on barely a living wage. So I hope this has been helpful. I'd love to hear your feedback on it, and please do some more research. It's all out there. Check out Open Secrets, and yeah, we'll talk more again soon. Thanks for watching.